there's a big thing about HOAs right now. Actually, it's been that way for a little bit. Well, if I have a short-term rental in an HOA area, can they come in and shut me down? You need to understand they can, depending on what your CC&Rs say. And there's a little bit of a gray area, but if you're buying a home in an HOA, you need to read those CC&Rs back and forth and make sure, do they say anything about the length of a rental? Do they say anything about being a rental? Because that wording can be used against you. So I would highly recommend, if you're buying a property in a HOA, make sure you have a good lawyer that understands the legality of short-term rentals with HOAs and what happens. And when you're in an HOA and you have a short-term rental, I recommend being on their best friends and on their side, because they can hurt you and they want to make sure that at the end of the day, you're friends with them. And you're not bringing in a short-term rental to have parties or anything like that. You're bringing in a short-term rental just like a long-term rental. You want to make money different ways. So short-term rentals can be great, but there's a few things that you need to do. Be friends with the HOA, make sure they understand you're not trying to bring in a house that is going to have parties. And there's certain things you can do about that as well.
And I'd also add, it's critical when you're analyzing a property to review the restrictions and the code and the covenants that the HOA CC&Rs provide. Because you're right, that you need to know your options of whether you're stuck to a 30-day minimum or a 6-month minimum. I've seen properties that have a 6-month minimum on residential rentals, and I've seen properties that have a 30-day minimum, and then some that don't have those restrictions. So you can do any type of lease, short-term lease, 30 days or less than 30 days. You can do a 1-night or 2-night or a nightly rental. So it's critical to review those forms before you make the purchase decision.
I saw one in Scottsdale that has a 9-month restriction. So it's imperative. You're buying a home, make sure your CC&Rs, you're very well versed in them. And if you have a question about them, because they are drawn up like lawyer paper. So if you have a question about them, get a lawyer on your side and make sure that you know what's going to happen if they decide to shut down short-term rentals or something. Make sure you know your options before you just buy a property and say, hey, I want to do this. Because if you're buying a property with the understanding that this is the rental income that's going to be coming in because I'm doing a short-term rental, that can hurt you if you have to go back to long-term.
Yeah, it absolutely can hurt you because it depends on how you run your numbers. And those are different numbers for sure on long-term versus short-term.
100%, because you're making more money on short-term than long-term, but long-term doesn't have the vacancy that short-term does. So it's important that you understand that, or anybody that's getting in the industry that understands that.